When the gunman entered the lobby of the Grand Meridian Hotel at 3:22 p.m., the wealthy guests screamed and scattered in panic. But the doorman they'd been treating like furniture moved different, swift, tactical, like he'd protected more important people in more dangerous places. What they didn't know was that Agent Marcus Thompson had spent 15 years protecting presidents, and their simple doorman was about to save 300 lives with skills learned guarding the most powerful people on Earth. Welcome to Stories of Secret Heroes. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden expertise and life-saving protection, tell me in the comments from which city are you watching this video today. And if you believe that the most important guardians often work quietly in plain sight, hit that subscribe button and help us share stories that matter. The Grand Meridian Hotel stood as a monument to luxury in downtown Manhattan, its 45 stories housing some of the world's most expensive suites, exclusive restaurants and meeting spaces where billion-dollar deals were negotiated over champagne that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The hotel catered to heads of state, Fortune 500 CEOs, Hollywood royalty, and anyone else whose wealth or power required the kind of service that anticipated needs before they were expressed. Agent Marcus Thompson had worked the front entrance of the Grand Meridian for 4 years, greeting guests with the professional courtesy that luxury hospitality demanded, while maintaining the nearly invisible presence that wealthy patrons preferred from their service staff. At 58, he moved with the measured precision of someone who understood that attention to detail could mean the difference between safety and catastrophe. Marcus wore the Grand Meridian's signature doorman uniform, navy blue coat with gold braiding, matching cap, white gloves and polished shoes that reflected the lobby's crystal chandeliers. He stood at his post near the revolving doors for 10 hours a day, opening car doors, handling luggage, providing directions, and maintaining the kind of seamless service that allowed the hotel's clientele to move through their lives without acknowledging the people who facilitated that movement. What the Grand Meridian's guests didn't know was that Agent Marcus Thompson had spent 15 years with the United States Secret Service, protecting 3 different presidents during some of the most dangerous periods in modern American history. He'd coordinated security for state visits to hostile nations, managed threat assessments during domestic appearances, and positioned himself between the most powerful people on Earth and anyone who might wish them harm. Marcus had retired from the Secret Service in 2019 after a distinguished career that included commendations for valor, expertise in executive protection, and the kind of security clearance that allowed him access to information that could reshape global politics. The hotel doorman job provided steady income, health insurance, and the psychological comfort of a structured environment where his protective instincts could be channeled into ensuring guest safety without the life-or-death stakes of presidential security. His training remained sharp despite his civilian employment. Marcus automatically assessed every person who entered the hotel, noting behavioral patterns that might indicate threat potential, monitoring crowd dynamics that could create security vulnerabilities, and maintaining the kind of situational awareness that had once kept presidents alive in environments where a single mistake could change history. The mockery at the Grand Meridian was institutional rather than personal, a reflection of the social dynamics that existed between extremely wealthy guests and the service workers who facilitated their comfort. To the hotel's clientele, Marcus was part of the building's infrastructure, necessary for their convenience but not worthy of recognition as a person with complex experience or specialized knowledge. The worst offender was Victoria Sterling, a 42-year-old hedge fund manager who'd built her fortune through aggressive investment strategies and maintained her social position through equally aggressive displays of superiority. Victoria stayed at the Grand Meridian twice a month for business meetings, always in the penthouse suite, always with an entourage that treated service workers like animated furniture. "Look at him," Victoria would say to her associates while Marcus helped with their luggage, speaking as if he were deaf rather than discreet. 58 years old and still opening doors for a living, that's what happens when you don't invest in yourself professionally. Her business partner, Charles Whitman, would nod while adjusting his Rolex. Some people just don't have what it takes to build something meaningful. They settle for service jobs and convince themselves they're contributing to society. The comments weren't directed at Marcus, but they were loud enough for him to hear while performing his duties. Victoria and her associates would discuss people who work with their hands instead of their minds and make observations about the limited options available to workers who hadn't developed the intelligence or ambition required for financial success. Marcus heard every word. His Secret Service training had taught him to remain professionally neutral, regardless of personal provocation, and that people often revealed their true character through how they treated those they perceived as powerless. Victoria's comments said more about her insecurities than about Marcus's capabilities, but the daily accumulation of casual cruelty created a psychological burden that former presidents had never imposed on him. Other guests followed Victoria's lead, treating Marcus as a symbol of what their success had helped them avoid becoming. They'd reference ending up like the doorman in conversations about career planning and personal development, using him as motivation to work harder and achieve more. Marcus maintained his professional composure while enduring treatment that was far worse than anything he'd experienced during his years protecting the most powerful people in the world. Presidents had treated him with respect and gratitude. Wealthy hotel guests treated him like he was invisible. Dr. Sarah Coleman had been attending conferences at the Grand Meridian for 8 months when she began noticing something unusual about the hotel's doorman. As a former CIA threat assessment analyst, Sarah had worked closely with Secret Service agents during joint security operations, and something about Marcus's professional bearing triggered her trained recognition. Marcus moved through the hotel lobby with the systematic awareness she recognized from executive protection specialists. He automatically positioned himself where he could observe all entrances and exits, monitored guest interactions for signs of conflict or unusual behavior, and carried himself with the controlled alertness that came from years of threat assessment training. Most tellingly, Marcus's responses to unusual situations, aggressive guests, equipment failures, emergency protocols showed the calm competence of someone who'd managed much more complex security challenges under much higher stakes. His communication was precise and professional, his problem-solving was systematic, and his physical conditioning was obviously maintained, despite his civilian job. One afternoon, while Marcus was coordinating luggage handling during a busy check-in period, Sarah noticed how he'd positioned the bell staff to provide optimal crowd control while maintaining clear sightlines to potential problem areas. It was a subtle detail, but it suggested training in crowd dynamics and threat management that went far beyond hospitality requirements. "You handle crowd control like someone with security training," Sarah commented when Marcus approached to assist with her luggage. Marcus looked at her carefully before responding. "Just trying to keep everyone safe and comfortable, ma'am. You prior law enforcement." Marcus paused, recognizing something in Sarah's question that suggested professional rather than casual interest. "Government service, ma'am. A long time ago. What kind of government service?" Another pause. "Executive protection." Sarah nodded slowly, understanding immediately what that meant in the context of Marcus's obvious competence and bearing. "Thank you for your service, and for keeping this place running smoothly." That night, Sarah spent 3 hours researching executive protection protocols and Secret Service training, trying to understand what kind of experience would produce the level of professionalism and expertise she'd observed in the Grand Meridian's doorman. The man entered the Grand Meridian lobby at 3:22 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in October, wearing a long coat despite the warm weather and carrying himself with the kind of controlled tension that Marcus recognized immediately from 15 years of threat assessment training. Marcus was stationed at his usual post near the revolving doors when he noticed the individual's behavioral patterns: rapid eye movement scanning the lobby, excessive perspiration despite the comfortable temperature, and the careful way he moved that suggested concealed weapons. Most concerning was the man's focus on the hotel's VIP elevator bank, where several high-profile guests were currently staying. Marcus's Secret Service training kicked in automatically. He began tracking the individual's movement through the lobby while maintaining his doorman duties, using peripheral vision and strategic positioning to monitor the potential threat without alerting anyone to his surveillance. The man approached the concierge desk and made inquiries about guest room numbers, claiming to be visiting a business associate. Marcus could see that the concierge was following standard privacy protocols by refusing to provide specific information, but the man's reaction to this refusal, increased agitation and aggressive body language, elevated Marcus's threat assessment to critical levels. Marcus discreetly activated the hotel's security alert system using the hidden communication device he'd convinced management to install after identifying numerous security vulnerabilities in their protocols. But he knew that hotel security staff weren't trained to handle armed threats, and that law enforcement response time would be at least 5 minutes too long if this individual was planning immediate violence. When the man reached into his coat and Marcus saw the unmistakable outline of a handgun, 15 years of presidential protection training took over completely. Marcus moved with the speed and precision that had once protected presidents from assassination attempts, crossing the lobby in seconds, while simultaneously coordinating an evacuation of civilians from the line of fire. "Gun, everyone down!" Marcus commanded with the authoritative voice that had once cleared rooms for presidential movements, his training automatically taking control of the situation. The gunman was startled by Marcus's rapid approach and professional response, apparently expecting panic rather than tactical intervention. He raised his weapon toward the ceiling in an attempt to gain control through intimidation, but Marcus was already implementing the protection protocols he'd used during real assassination attempts. Marcus tackled the gunman with textbook precision, using techniques perfected during Secret Service training to neutralize armed threats without endangering nearby civilians. The takedown was swift, controlled and complete. The gunman was disarmed and restrained before he could fire a single shot at any of the hotel guests. Within 30 seconds, Marcus had secured the weapon, restrained the attacker, and coordinated with hotel security to begin systematic evacuation procedures. His actions were so professional and efficient that many guests didn't immediately understand they'd just been saved from a potentially deadly attack. Victoria Sterling, who'd been in the lobby during the incident, stared at Marcus in complete bewilderment as he managed the crisis with calm authority that seemed impossible from the simple doorman she'd been mocking for years. "Stay calm and follow the evacuation procedures," Marcus instructed the crowd of guests with the same professional competence he'd once used to protect world leaders. "Security personnel will guide you to safe areas while law enforcement secures the scene." The police arrived 4 minutes later to find a controlled situation managed by someone whose expertise in executive protection had prevented what could have been a massacre in one of Manhattan's most exclusive hotels. Detective Lieutenant Rodriguez, the NYPD's lead investigator for the incident, immediately recognized that the hotel's doorman had handled the armed threat with professional-grade tactical skills that exceeded standard civilian training. "Sir," Detective Rodriguez asked Marcus, "what's your background in threat neutralization?" "United States Secret Service, retired. 15 years of presidential protection detail." Detective Rodriguez examined Marcus's intervention techniques and crisis management procedures with professional admiration. This was textbook executive protection response. "You probably saved dozens of lives today." The revelation that their doorman was a former Secret Service agent spread through the hotel's wealthy clientele within hours, but the story that emerged was more complex than typical hero narratives. This wasn't just about a hidden expert saving the day, it was about institutional blindness that had prevented them from recognizing the extraordinary qualifications of someone they'd been treating as invisible infrastructure. Victoria Sterling struggled to reconcile her casual dismissal of Marcus as a failed service worker with the recognition that he'd just used skills developed protecting presidents to save her life. The man she'd used as an example of limited achievement had training and experience that exceeded anything in her hedge fund background. "We had no idea," Victoria told the news reporter who interviewed hotel guests about the incident. "For 4 years we treated him like he was just part of the building. We never asked about his background, his experience, anything. We just assumed." Charles Whitman, who'd made comments about Marcus's lack of meaningful contribution for months, found himself unable to explain his previous attitude when confronted with the reality of what Marcus had accomplished. The doorman he'd dismissed as intellectually inferior had just prevented a mass shooting using expertise developed during years of protecting the most important people in the world. The media attention following the thwarted attack led to broader interest in Marcus's Secret Service career and the transition challenges faced by retired agents in civilian employment. Federal law enforcement organizations shared his story as an example of how elite protective skills often remained hidden and undervalued in post-government careers. Marcus's Secret Service record revealed a distinguished career that included protection details for presidents during state visits to hostile nations, security coordination for major international summits, and threat neutralization training that represented the pinnacle of executive protection expertise. He'd been part of the team that protected world leaders during some of the most dangerous diplomatic meetings in modern history. "Agent Thompson represents the elite of executive protection specialists," explained Director Patricia Hayes, Marcus's former supervisor at the Secret Service, during a news interview. "These are individuals who undergo training that prepares them for the most sophisticated threats against the highest value targets. Agent Thompson was among our most accomplished operatives." The contrast between Marcus's government service achievements and his civilian hotel job sparked conversations about veteran employment, societal assumptions about success, and the hidden expertise that existed in service industries. His story became part of broader discussions about recognizing value in all forms of work and understanding that career transitions often involved highly skilled people taking jobs that didn't reflect their full capabilities. But Marcus himself remained focused on the practical aspects of his situation. The hotel job had provided the steady schedule and structured environment he needed while adjusting to civilian life after decades of high-stress government service. The threat neutralization had been a natural application of his training, not a dramatic career change or personal transformation. In the weeks following the attack, Marcus's relationship with the Grand Meridian's clientele changed dramatically. The casual dismissal and condescending treatment were replaced by genuine respect and recognition, but more importantly, by curiosity about his experiences and gratitude for his continued presence at the hotel. Victoria Sterling struggled with the recognition that she'd spent 4 years displaying exactly the kind of arrogant ignorance that prevented effective teamwork and mutual respect. The man she'd dismissed as a service worker failure had skills that had literally saved her life using expertise she couldn't comprehend. "Marcus," Victoria approached him the week after the incident, "I owe you an apology. The way I've treated you, the things I've said, I was completely wrong." Marcus continued his doorman duties while he listened, maintaining the professional courtesy that had defined his service in both government and civilian roles. "Ma'am, you weren't wrong about my current employment. I am a hotel doorman. But you're also a decorated Secret Service agent. You've protected presidents. You have experience I can't imagine." Marcus looked at the young hedge fund manager who'd spent years making him feel invisible.
Different jobs require different skills, Miss Sterling. You're excellent at financial management. I'm experienced in executive protection. Both have value. Why didn't you ever tell us about your background? Because it wasn't relevant to opening doors and handling luggage. But when someone threatened the safety of hotel guests, it became relevant. Victoria nodded slowly, understanding that Marcus's humility about his extraordinary background only made his heroism more impressive. The months following the thwarted attack saw significant changes in how the Grand Meridian operated and how its guests interacted with service staff. The management team implemented new security protocols that utilized Marcus's executive protection expertise while formally recognizing his role in guest safety coordination. Marcus became the hotel's unofficial security consultant, applying his threat assessment skills to identify potential vulnerabilities before they became dangerous. His systematic approach to guest protection, developed during presidential security details, improved safety protocols across the entire property. Victoria and Marcus developed an unlikely professional relationship, combining her business networks with his security expertise to improve safety at corporate events and high-profile meetings. Victoria learned to appreciate the value of experience-based knowledge, while Marcus gained respect for the intellectual rigor required for successful financial management. I've learned more about real-world risk assessment from Marcus in 3 months than I did in 15 years of business school, Victoria told her investment partners during a strategy meeting. The collaboration between white-collar expertise and executive protection experience became a model for other luxury establishments, demonstrating that effective security required recognizing and utilizing the full spectrum of knowledge and experience available within their staff. Marcus never returned to government service, but he found ways to apply his Secret Service expertise to civilian safety challenges. He began consulting on executive protection for private clients and volunteering with organizations that provided security training for high-risk business environments. 2 years after the attack, the Grand Meridian had become known throughout the hospitality industry for its exceptional security standards and respectful treatment of all staff members. The protocols developed by Marcus had been adopted by other luxury hotels, creating industry-wide improvements in guest protection and employee recognition. Marcus continued working as the hotel's doorman, but his role had evolved to include formal responsibilities for security assessment and threat management. He'd found a way to use his Secret Service background constructively while maintaining the structured routine that helped him manage the psychological transition from government service to civilian life. The wealthy guests who frequented the Grand Meridian learned to see Marcus not just as the former agent who'd saved their lives, but as someone whose choice to continue serving others, whether protecting presidents or hotel guests, represented the same dedication to public safety that made him exceptional in any context. Victoria Sterling became an advocate for veteran employment rights and respectful treatment of service workers, using her business platform to promote the recognition that expertise existed in unexpected places and that assumptions about people's worth based on current employment were often dangerous and wrong. But perhaps the most important change was cultural. The guests who'd learned to respect Marcus carried that lesson into their interactions with other service workers, understanding that everyone they encountered might have experiences and capabilities that would surprise them. Agent Marcus Thompson still works at the Grand Meridian Hotel, still greets guests with the professional courtesy that luxury hospitality demands, still maintains the kind of vigilant presence that ensures everyone's safety.
The attack that revealed his background lasted less than 5 minutes, but its impact on the hotel community has been permanent. The gunman who entered the lobby that October afternoon had planned to target several high-profile guests in what would have been one of Manhattan's deadliest hotel attacks. Instead, he encountered someone whose training in presidential protection made his violence impossible and his capture inevitable. The skills that had once kept world leaders safe had seamlessly transferred to keeping hotel guests safe. Marcus's Secret Service motto, worthy of trust and confidence, had guided him through 15 years of government service and continued to guide him through civilian life. Whether protecting presidents or hotel guests, the principle remained the same. When people were threatened, you acted with professional competence and personal courage, regardless of recognition or social status. The mockery that once filled Marcus's workdays has been replaced by genuine respect and gratitude, but not because people learned about his government service. The respect comes from recognition that his willingness to risk his life for strangers, whether in government service or civilian employment, represented the same dedication to protecting others that made him exceptional in any context. The wealthy guests who dismissed him as just a doorman learned that their safety had been ensured for 4 years by someone whose expertise in executive protection exceeded anything they'd encounter in their business or social lives. They learned that strength often worked quietly, that expertise often served humbly, and that the people protecting them might be the same people they saw every day without really seeing at all. Late at night, when Marcus finishes his shift and reviews the day's security assessments, he sometimes thinks about the presidents he protected and the hotel guests he continues to protect. The stakes are different, the protocols are different, but the mission is the same, ensuring that good people can live their lives safely, whether they're world leaders or wealthy tourists. The most important protection details aren't always the ones that make headlines. Sometimes they happen in hotel lobbies, when someone with the right training happens to be in the right place, with the willingness to run toward danger instead of away from it. So I ask you, have you ever met someone like Agent Marcus Thompson? Someone whose current job didn't reflect their extraordinary service record, whose skills became apparent only when people's lives depended on them, who chose humble work while carrying the responsibility of protecting others. Share their story in the comments. Tell us about the service member, the quiet professional, the person everyone overlooked who turned out to have experience protecting the most important people in the world. Because here at Stories of Secret Heroes, we know that the most important protection often works invisibly, without recognition, until the moment when everything depends on someone knowing exactly how to keep people safe. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with others. Help us honor the hidden guardians who bring extraordinary expertise to ordinary jobs, and remind the world that the people ensuring our safety often do so without fanfare or recognition. We'll see you in the next story, and until then, remember to treat everyone with respect, because you never know when the person opening your door might be someone who once opened doors for presidents. But more importantly, they're someone doing honest work that deserves your recognition, regardless of where they've served or what they've protected. Real protection doesn't announce itself. It works quietly, professionally, and with the understanding that keeping people safe is the highest form of service, whether it's provided in the White House or in hotel lobbies where ordinary people deserve extraordinary care, worthy of trust and confidence.